Sam Howell has been through a whirlwind this past year, going from a presumptive top end of the first round draft pick to the first pick of the fifth round. There's not that many people in this world that have ever experienced what it's like to go through the NFL draft, but you know who has? North Carolina quarterback Scott Stankavage. He joins me on today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Friday, May 6, 2022. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, beat writer for Sports Illustrated's All Tar Heels website, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen every single day. Please remember that we are free and available anywhere that you get podcasts. For those of you watching, thanks for making it your first watch today. And please remember, you can subscribe. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notifications anytime new episodes drop. Also, please make sure to like and comment on this video. We're trying to every day get the show up to 200 likes and 50 comments, just so we can continue to build this community of people diving into it and just having healthy conversation with one another. But I'm about to do you the biggest solid of all. It is Friday, and do not forget, 2 days from now is Mother's Day. Call your mamas. If you have a wife who is a mother, make sure you honor her well. Whatever you need to do, take care of Mother's Day this weekend in a good way. All right, we're going to get right into talking with Mr. Scott Stankavage here on Locked On Tar Heels. So glad to be joined today on Locked On Tar Heels by former Carolina, you know what, he's not former, he's still a Carolina quarterback, he's just an alum now, Scott Stankavage. Scott, it's so great to have you on. For those who don't remember Scott's tenure, he was at Carolina from 1980, 1984, the first Tar Heel quarterback in the NFL. Scott, just tell us a little bit, welcome to the show, tell us a little bit about your time in Chapel Hill.
It's great to be here, and yes, I am a Tar Heel, and I do have the dubious distinction, I think, of being the first quarterback to play quarterback in the NFL from Carolina. So, and it was a crazy situation against the Chicago Bears' greatest defense in history, and they beat the heck out of me. So it's dubious. Baptism by fire was the cover in the USA Today, but being a Carolina Tar Heel is it's changed my life, obviously. Come down here from Philadelphia, and we were talking earlier a little bit about how I got here. I was a dominant athlete in high school in a football region outside of Philadelphia, there's a lot of dominant athletes in high school. But when I got to Carolina, it was Lawrence Taylor who alerted me to the fact when I was trying to sprint out on him in our first scrimmage in Kenan Stadium. He picked me up like a rag doll and literally took me back to quarterback coach Cleve Bryant and threw me on the ground, kind of like I saw this quarterback run around out there. Is he yours? The whole staff laughed, and I was seriously and the quarterback coach Bryant said, "Are you going to tell me Lawrence Taylor's a better man than you?" I said, "Well, apparently." So great memories of coming down from Pennsylvania and coming to Carolina. And I came to Carolina because it was something that nobody had done from our area, or at least not in a high-profile way. I actually had committed to Virginia. Nobody had gone to Virginia either, but the Ivy League of the South. And but coming to Carolina, I got to see the Tar Heels play Yale in Carmichael in basketball. I was also a pretty good basketball player and had some college basketball opportunities. So Carolina, the pretty girls, which is a criteria, the weather, the campus. I went back and I had to call Virginia and say, sorry, I'm going to Chapel Hill. One of the great decisions of my life. I have 7 children. Three of them live with me because they're 12, and 10. And my 2 daughters have 3 grandsons. They're in Charlotte. My ex-wife's in Charlotte. My son's in Nashville. My brother's in Charlotte with 3 tremendous athletes. So, yeah, the Stankavages, because of that recruiting trip, the Stankavages are now North Carolinians.
There you go. I love that. Well, what a welcome to college football for you, Scott. Here's LT, one of the greatest defenders of all time.
And we knew it then, too. It wasn't like he was a secret.
Yeah, so, man, that's incredible. Yeah. And what's interesting about that is you've talked to me before about how while you were a student athlete at Carolina, there was this great renaissance of athletes all over campus. Just talk to us about some of those people and what that meant to be part of that time period.
Yeah, I think we knew it when we were there, but certainly looking back in the early 90s, we knew it. I mean, the golf team was John Inman, Davis Love, and Jackie Nicklaus, right? Anson Dorrance was starting his soccer dynasty. There was an All-American iconic player. I don't remember her name. Before Mia Hamm, Mia Hamm would be the predecessor to hold the mantle. Sue Walsh, who I was actually married to for 13 years, and we had 3 kids. She never lost a backstroke race. She was an All-American. The swim team with Amy Plass and Jenny Strickland and many others were in the top 4 in the country. A basketball team, 81 with Jimmy Black, we lost at the Spectrum to Indiana. Next year, 82, and Michael comes in and we win in New Orleans. The lacrosse team was Willie Scroggs and Tommy Sears and Peter Vogel and Mike Mullman, and that's where that dynasty started. I'm sure I'm missing some, but it was literally walking across campus arguing about who's got money for Domino's pizza. It was just incredible. And it was Michael Jordan, and I roomed with Matt Doherty for summer, and Jimmy Black, and Sam Perkins was a classmate of mine with Matt, James Worthy. It was a who's who of iconic college players, but then iconic in the history of some of the games, when you talk about Michael and LT. So it was a great time to be a Tar Heel. It still is, but those were unbelievably special times.
That's right. And let's not forget the football team under your part your leadership as quarterback. What were the quarterback and the football years like in your tenure?
Well, before I got there, Coach Dooley had created a very, very strong program. And in fact, Vince Dooley was, I don't know if it was Bill Dooley, I think, or Vince, the one that was at Carolina. He had recruited LT and Donnell Thompson and those and all those guys that led us in 1980 to an 11-1 record. Our only loss was at Oklahoma, which is a whole other story in itself, with J.C. Watts and the boys. But then Coach Crum came in, and the names that were reeled off, especially on the offensive and defensive lines, Lawrence Taylor, Donnell Thompson, Mike Wiltshire, Calvin Daniels, those are all top, first 3-round draft picks. And then you had on the offensive line Dave Drexler and Brian Blados and Harris Barton, Ron Wooten, Rick Donnelly. I mean, those are all first-team All-Americans and high NFL draft picks that played a long time in the league. And then at running back, we had Amos Lawrence, and then it went to Kelvin Bryant. We had Amos and Kelvin in one backfield. Then the next year, we had Kelvin Bryant and Tyrone Anthony in that back. The next week, we had Tyrone Anthony and Ethan Horton in that backfield. And then the next year, we had Ethan and William Humes. They were 2 1,000-yard rushers. Everyone I mentioned was a dual 1,000-yard rusher in those seasons, which is just phenomenal.
That's insane.
We were a dominant team. We never ended up. We climbed the mountain. We get to 2 or 3 in the country and then fall off because we played Maryland and Clemson at the end of the season. That's part of the reason. But Maryland won a national championship. The quarterbacks were Ben Bennett, Boomer Esiason, myself, a guy named Mike Epley, who was a real good player at Clemson. He also played basketball. So people remember, you all ACC. I said, no, I was academic all ACC, but it's gotten far enough away that if you really don't know your time frames and you want to say I'm all ACC, I'll accept it.
Yeah.
But I think Boomer and Ben set the record actually in Kenan Stadium, the first game under the lights in Kenan Stadium. Ben was at Duke. He had passed Jim McMahon for the all-time passing yardage leader in NCAA history against us. And we won the game on the final drive, scored a running touchdown and stormed the field. And I don't know why we were so excited to beat Duke in football, but apparently we were.
That's
I get myself in trouble there. Anyway, you hit play. You asked me a question, hit play.
That's great.
Hang on, because it comes out, because those are some of the favorite times of my life.
I love it. And thank you so much for sharing those, Scott. It's just neat to see inside the dorm room, if you'll allow me that phrase. That's great. And one of the really neat things about that is because your Carolina career and then going on to the NFL was so successful. One of the neat things that you've told me happens even still to this day is people will take time out of their day to say something to you or recognize you and talk about how meaningful you were to them. So my question is, why is it so important for you to have a conversation with people who you meant something to, people who say, man, I remember number 14 in this play? Well, why is that important to you?
Well, some people remember number 14 as Mark Maye, and Mark and I always argue about that. I was the first number 14. And if you get into my security codes, I shouldn't say that, but there's a 14 on. Because I was 14 in junior high all the way through my athletic career. But we did talk about that, and the story I related was with my 12, 12, and 10. We're out at a restaurant or at the beach or something, and someone will come up and say, "Are you Scott Stankavage, or do you know?" In fact, I was at a 5-star restaurant, and the waiter said, "Would you be Mr. Stankavage? Would you be related to Scott Stankavage?" My wife rolls her eyes, like, "Oh, here we go again." And I so I was tried to be very gracious, and we told stories with this guy, and I do every time. And then I talked to my kids, and I explained to them, and my wife, I explained to them, it's a tremendous responsibility, I believe, on me. And most athletes, I think, if they accept the responsibility, if someone puts you, picture of them up in your room when they're 10, right? Or someone pretends to be you out in the yard when they're 12, or they wear your jersey, right, to the game when they're 6. And then 30 years later, 20 years later, or the next year, they get to meet you. They have you on such a pedestal. They don't know if you're a jerk personally, or it's a burden, but it's a tremendous responsibility to share with them and honor their memory. That we both participated in, me as a player and them as a fan. I was that little guy, and I remember, I never met Julius Erving or, some of the guys that I admired, but it's a responsibility, and I take it very seriously. And it really, I just feel such joy when I can shake a hand or sign an autograph, or somebody remembers. I'm flattered that they remember that far ago. So anyway, that's a big deal, and I think Carolina trains you as an athlete to have that kind of humility and understand the position that Carolina gives you on TV and in the community, and it's part of I think your responsibility as an athlete in college, as a pro, and certainly as a Tar Heel.
Yeah, man, that's so great, Scott. And just thank you for that example of being a kind human being, regardless of what field or occupation you're in. Just the honoring the humanity in all of us, and I think that's such a win. So thank you, as a fan, that means a lot.
Yeah.
And so, as we've said, Scott had a phenomenal Carolina career, which led him to an opportunity to be part of the NFL. What was that experience like for him, going through the draft and everything? We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Built Bar. Summer is coming, and with that, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations or picnics or whatever kind of trips you might be going on. Just throw them in your bags and you're good to go. Make sure that everyone has one of those bars so that you are fueled for all your summer adventures. All Built Bars and Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means that with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy it. And in fact, have you tried the Built Puffs yet? These things are incredible, and they come in flavors like banana, cream pie, and churro. That sounds phenomenal. I want to get all of that churro protein bar. Who has cool flavors like that? Built Bar does. If that's not enough, just those individual flavors, get one of the mix boxes that come with 12 different flavors and are going to have bars and churros. The best part, once again, is they're both healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for your health. With Built Bar, you can have your cake and eat it too. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. While you're there, check out some of these numbers. Most Built Bars contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. When you compare that to a normal candy bar, you know which option you need to go with. So, go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Well, I want to give a special shout out to those of you who are watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for making the show your first watch every day, making it part of your routine. It just means so much that this community is growing and evolving. Once again, we are joined today on Locked on Tar Heels by Carolina quarterback Scott Stankavage. And he had some great Carolina experiences, which led him to the opportunity to be part of the NFL. And so what we want to do now, with just having had the draft this past weekend, is to hear a little bit of the experience from him of getting inside the mind of a draftee and what that is like. And so, Scott, just kind of take us through this lead up to the draft and what it's like.
Spurs a lot of memories and opinions and feelings and emotions. High school recruiting of athletes is a very difficult period because a lot of people don't tell you the truth, right? They just want you to come to their school and whatever they got to tell you. And, where grown men get to deceive, teenager legally. I've heard it described that way. I wouldn't call it quite that egregious, but similarly, the NFL draft, I was the number one passing efficiency leader for the country for 8 weeks, and I was getting a letter from the Cowboys, and it was a different time in the way they communicated. But the coaches would tell me, "Yeah, the Chargers were coming in to see you today, and your arm strength or whatever," and so. I never dreamed of playing in the pros until my junior year. I had some success, and some of the guys would come back from NFL camps and say, "Hey, Scott, you can do this." And so I put it on my list to do. And in our senior year, we were third in the country and 8-0, went up to Maryland and lost in the last 15 seconds. Crazy deal. And so my bubble was a little bit shattered, and I really wasn't good enough to be long-term in the pros, but I wanted to be. And so when draft day came, I didn't really know what. I mean, some guys, you might be drafted in late rounds, or you'd be a preferred free agent. And I just didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't want to deal with it. So I went golfing. I went to Finley, played 18 with a buddy. There were no cell phones. So I got back to my room. I had 8 different calls from contracts, priority free agent. I selected the Denver Broncos. Because I thought that was the best opportunity. Elway was a rookie, Kubiak was a rookie. Had a guy named Scott Bruner, and they were the ones that had shown the most interest and talked to me, and so I felt best about that. And Kyle Shanahan was a ball boy, but his dad, Mike, and Alex Gibbs, they were rookies too. So I spent a lot of time when I signed with them in a Wendy's learning the playbook with Coach Shanahan and Coach Gibbs, which was great. I was the third quarterback there. I was a guy that was a good citizen and wasn't going to get in trouble. If I was in the game, the team had a lot bigger problems. But you throw with you're in the meetings, all that, and you're just meant not to be a distraction. As a third guy, and Coach Reeves eventually said, "You can be a second guy for somebody, but not here. We have Gary Kubiak." And so I ended up going to the Philadelphia Eagles, which is my hometown, and Buddy Ryan. I had a horrible experience there. And then during the strike, I got a chance to go down with Shula in Miami. So great, offensive minds that I was. I told other people, my best skill was coachability. If there were things I couldn't do, but I'll do it tomorrow. I didn't know it today, but I'll learn it by tomorrow. And that's a pretty good skill to have. And it got me to the NFL, but it was 3 years. It was on and off the rosters. Wasn't long enough to get my pension there. But I made $140,000 a year with a baseball cap turned backward and clipboard, standing on the sidelines watching
Nothing
John
wrong
Elway.
with that.
Hey,
yeah.
All right. So it was great, but I hate draft day. I just hate draft day. I hated it for Sam Howell. I hate it for all of them. I just hate draft day because I don't know who gets the right story, right? Who's really getting it? I mean, the number one guy didn't even know who it was going to be. They picked the linebacker instead of so-and-so. So I'm not worried about the top 10 guys. But the guys in rounds 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, man, it's a hard experience.
Why did you personally? You just said, "Man, I hated draft day." What is it about that? Is it the anticipation? Is it the not knowing?
Yeah, your hopes are so high, you actually believe what people tell you. There's no benefit to anybody in the league to tell you we're not interested. You're not a player. Everybody gets pumped up so that if somebody moves somewhere or drafts somebody or somebody gets hurt, they have a relationship with you. So the truth is very tightly held by each club because, they don't want the other teams to know who they like and who they're going to draft and who they're thinking of. And we got to move up to get Malik Willis, or maybe he'll still be there. All of that stuff. Now, I wasn't, Malik Willis, and like I say, I was a free agent, but
Sure.
And there's a big free agent scramble, which is different than the draft. But Coach Wilson, who is a mentor of mine as a quarterback and as a father and as a man, wrote a book about him called The QB Mentor. But anyway, he's working with Brandon Peters, who went to Michigan and was starter at Illinois. I mean, Brandon's 6'5", 240, runs a 4.5, can throw it a country mile. I mean, Josh Allen, and guess where he's a preferred free agent to? Behind Justin Herbert in San Diego, because that's the kind of athlete he is. Nobody looked at college and thought Brandon was, going to be a super duper NFL quarterback. But when he got coached and he learned some things on his motion and he gets in the right system and San Diego knows what they're going to do, that's an offensive coach, you never know. So I'm a big fan of his. And I do watch the quarterbacks, though. And I do feel sorry. Like Sam was the one that was hard. Pickett, I like seeing go early. Ritter fell a little bit. Malik Willis, who seems to be just an all-American man, he slid to a level that everybody's, what's going on? And then all of a sudden you become the story. Aaron Rodgers, it happened to Aaron Rodgers when he slid to 24. Yeah. Nobody knew Brady. He slid to the 6th round, and he's the GOAT. So, hey, they don't know how to draft quarterbacks. They don't know. I mean, literally, when you do a study on who was what and when and what they said about them, it's not guesswork, but they're less than 50-50 on who the dominant quarterback is going to be. Like we talked earlier, there's only 20 people in the world that can be, a good to great NFL quarterback. At any one time, there's no more than 20 men that can do that because there's 32 teams, and all 32 don't have one. Right. If you don't have one, you're looking for one. And if you have one, you're seeing how long we can ride them. And how much we have to pay him, but there's, think about it. There's probably 15 great ones, and the other people are looking for them. So it's not an exact science. And those of us that competed to be in it, we talked about the only thing football guarantees you is that one day you'll be an ex-football player. That's the only guarantee. That's the only one. Only one. One day you'll be an ex. And that's sooner than later for some guys after their college is done and they get to sit in the pros, and the pros are just faster than the college, and it's a whole different animal, and all of a sudden you're done playing football.
Yeah. Sure. And one day that'll be true for Sam Howell as well. We don't know when that'll be, but we're going to talk
it'll be 10 or 12 years from now.
That'd be incredible. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk more about that and dig a little bit into maybe why Sam Howell slid and what's going on there in just a moment. But first, let me tell you a little bit about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NBA playoffs and the beginning of the MLB season. BetOnline's even already published odds for next year's Final Four national championship game. Kentucky leads the way at 8-1 odds, but the Tar Heels are right behind at 10-1. So go check those out. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Again, we are joined today on Locked on Tar Heels by Carolina quarterback Scott Stankavage. It's so great to have Scott with us. We've been talking about his experiences as a Tar Heel, his experiences as part of the NFL draft, leading to being in that position. And so then just with that unique insight, now we want to look specifically at Sam Howell, a little bit about what he might have experienced through this whole draft scenario, and then maybe why he slipped a little bit. And so, Scott, when we look at it, this time last year, you go back and look at mock drafts, Sam Howell is projected first overall or seventh overall or, definitely first round, if not the very top of the first round. What happened between May 2021 and May 2022 to change that?
He lost the two running backs and the two wide receivers, right? And I think he lost an offensive lineman, and I'm not sure the defense was as good. So, we talked a little bit about, Coach Longo and Coach Brown's job is to win football games this season, at Carolina. It's not to get their quarterback to be, first round draft pick. And sometimes those are at odds, right? So you run Sam Howell more. We can't run the ball as well with the running backs. Sam feels the pressure to make more plays, because he's got less playmakers, so he's got to make more. Maybe he forces the ball and a little bit more often than he should. He had one guy that could separate, and then guys that couldn't separate, like the second and third round picks from the year before. So, and that he was penalized for that, some of those decision making, and he traded this year at Carolina, and an element of his education and degree and that experience in a college locker room. For some money, probably a lot of money in the next 4 years. But if he's as good as I think he is and can be and will be, and he gets in the right situation, he'll make up for, the millions that he lost by staying because he wasn't drafted in the first round. I think he has that kind of talent.
So, obviously, I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you believe that NFL front offices missed because of a perceived struggles this year in Chapel Hill?
Well, yeah, they can only look at what they see. And, the scouting report, and I watched the ESPN and watched him play. He has a howitzer for an arm. It's so powerful. It'd be one of the most powerful in the NFL. And the ability to throw the deep ball, especially for a team that wants to run and play action, I couldn't throw it deep. And the guys that can't throw it deep are way different than anybody else. They just throw a beautiful ball. They have control on it. It's soft. It has an arc. It just drops from the sky. Receiver can track it and catch it. Sam has that. That in and of itself is worthy of an NFL quarterback spot. You have to do other things. Plus, he's mobile, and he's strong, and he's a leader. And I heard one of the draft guys say, in fact, it was RG3 who said Sam Howell's presence and persona in a locker room and building is alpha enough to lead an organization. So he has all that. But the things that he showed were inaccuracy. I think if we're being absolutely critical, some of the technique he uses to throw with his weight transfer and so on leads a little bit to his inaccuracy. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. I heard, the draft guru from 1984, talk about his ball falls off the table. I don't think I've ever seen it fall off the table, but his inaccuracy. And in the pros, let me just tell you this: we haven't talked about this. Accuracy is an absolute. Absolute. I wrote the book QB Mentor, and there's a quote that Bill Walsh said about Joe Montana. Joe said, or said, hit him in the eye. And Joe said, which eye?
Which one?
Right? That's the deal. I took my son to watch Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, Jake Delhomme, and one other top quarterback at the time, and Drew Brees. And I was on the field at the Panthers. So this is, 10 or 15 years ago. I was on the field in pregame, and I told my son, watch every single ball of those quarterbacks in warmups. And it was hitting people in the left shoulder pad, the right shoulder pad, outs, comebacks, drags, bombs, corners, post, skinny post. Every ball. There was none on the ground. The accuracy was absolutely absolute. And so I don't know that college quarterbacks it's demanded of them, and the skill set may not be there, but at that level, accuracy is non-negotiable. And so that, I think, is decision making, which speaks a little bit to the decision or the scheme he operated in. So there were things that dropped him. I didn't know that he should have gone that far, but I'm not a GM. But there were things, and I don't know that. I think Sam's a humble guy. I would say that this humbled him, but I know he probably has a chip on his shoulder. Which Tom came out with a chip on his shoulder in the sixth round, and I think Sam goes up. I think I love the Commanders, and the coach is a strong leader. They're trying to change the culture. Sam's a cultural guy.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of Sam's as an athlete, as a quarterback, as a young man, and as a Tar Heel. So I think the future's bright for him.
That's incredible. Now,
I would ask Mitch Trubisky. I would tell you about Mitch Trubisky. I think Mitch is gonna have he's going to earn himself a starting quarterback position. Not at Pittsburgh. He'll play well enough at Pittsburgh that he will become, because he was something. I don't like the Chicago offense, and so I thought Mitch was, it was a bad situation for him, and he made some mistakes and he made some decisions, but he was under Larry Fedora, right? And they were just trying to run as many plays as possible. So in terms of reading sophisticated defensive techniques and disguises of the NFL, they weren't trained. Anyway, as he got trained, I'm a fan of Mitch Trubisky too. So I think he's going to play well in Pittsburgh. I think Sam is going to get his shot in Washington, and hopefully we'll see those Tar Heels as quarterbacks for a long time in the NFL.
Man, that'd be great. For Sam, you talked about that accuracy piece. Is that something, when you watch him mechanically, do you think it's just a matter of he's not a student athlete anymore, and now now that he's just football all the time, that's something that he grows in?
Technically, the element or the science of throwing a projectile, particularly one that's oblong and is meant to fly into the wind a long way and very accurately, is a very highly specified science, and it's studied. And if you look deep enough, Tom House is a guru. There are self-proclaimed gurus popping up all over, but rarely will a quarterback himself know how to do that. It's not a matter of how hard you work. It's how hard you work at the right things. And there are people that just teach not what I believe in and not what I've seen have success from. I'm working with a phenom that's going into ninth grade, and from what he's taught and what he's seen and what he can do, all the way to Brandon Peters we talked about earlier. And so it would behoove Sam that he finds somebody that helps him with his accuracy, and I believe that will be handled, technically and physically, not his arm strength. But the accuracy on the deep ball is not in question, so that's a gift. And remember, we said if you go to a running team that likes to run the ball and play defense, a la Washington, do a little play action and slip a guy behind you, that's a great place for him. So
that's where he shines, yeah.
Quarterbacks, in the theory of quarterbacking, or in particular offensive football, and I was of this because I wasn't a big playmaker to win the game, but as a quarterback, even in the most run-oriented offense, there will be 3 or 4 plays that are touchdown passes, that are huge plays, where the defense messed up and we got a guy behind him in the post, right? Where they double the wrong guy and the guy's running wide open in the seam, or a cornerback gets beat off the line and all of a sudden we got to go route, and it's easy. But if you don't see those plays and you don't make those plays, then those 3 or 4 plays go by and now we got to sludge it out, But if you make those plays, you've got 21 or 28 points on the board. And so, the great quarterbacks don't miss those. You make a mistake on defense, they know where everybody's supposed to be. And if somebody's not where they're supposed to be, they know what it means, where to attack, wham. Mac Jones in New England, right? Tom Brady, wherever he's at. You make a mistake, Peyton Manning, you listen to his podcast. Drew Brees, you never listen to him talk. Tony Romo, you listen to him talk. I mean, it's like they're, Nostradamus, when what they're going to look at that. So, I think Sam will pick up his accuracy because he has to. And I think it'll come by somebody that is trained in that and can help him with it.
Good. How big of a win is it for him to not be thrust immediately into a starting role and have the opportunity to learn behind Carson Wentz?
It's huge. I think he'll learn from Heinicke as well. Heinicke is a quality human being and a good talent. My son was his age, and he went to ODU, and so we followed him. And a guy named Kyle Allen, that was a recruiting class that my son Sean was in, so we know those guys. Big fan of Tayler as well. He bounced around a little bit to get his shot. But Sam's arm is stronger than Tyler's, and Tayler knows how to be a starter in the NFL. So Sam's not going to come in and be moved ahead of him. But watching the NFL game, especially the science of defense, is really important for Sam. And I don't believe that, he learned it at that level at Carolina, like maybe Alabama teaches it, right? Or maybe Lincoln Riley teaches it at Oklahoma, or the Ohio State guys, which is Kevin, I forget, he was my backup center, and he's now the wide receivers coach at Ohio State. Nice. So I'm in touch with him. Kevin Wilson's his name. He was the head coach. But anyway, the way they teach it, there are people in college that teach it at a different level, at an NFL level, literally. Old Miss Lane Kiffin probably not teaching the NFL type stuff, teaching more of the run and shoot and just look at that guy if he's open, throw it. If he's not, look at this guy, throw it. If he's not, run around, make a play. The NFL is all about what's the defense going to give us, and we take it. But the defense knows what their weakness is. So they are trying to hide their weakness or protect their weakness. So at the three-level chess game in the NFL, we're not attacking the weakness of the defense. We're attacking the protection of the weakness that the defense is doing. You with me? I mean, so it's like, they're playing cover 4, so they're weak in the flat, so we're going to throw in the flat. They know they're weak in the flat, so that corner isn't, you don't run the corner off, he's going to be in the flat. Oh, okay, so maybe run a double move on the corner because he's, right? So it is so many plays ahead. And like we said, there are 3 or 4 plays. I mean, Pep Hamilton's the OC at the Texans right now, and been all around the league, trained Andrew Luck, was with Justin Herbert, is the reason for Davis Mills down there at Houston playing so well. And he's told me, we set up plays. We set a whole game for one play. We'll run a slant. We'll run a slant this way. We'll run a slant out of that formation for one play, so that in the fourth quarter, when we need it, a first down or a touchdown, they've seen a steady diet of this, and you got to make that play because everything came down to us setting up that play. And so there'll be 3 or 4 of those in the game, and the great ones make it, and the average ones make it occasionally.
Yeah.
So.
Man, that's so good, Scott. Thank you for all that insight. And ladies and gentlemen, that's our hope, is that we're going to see Sam Howell rise to that level where he is one of those elite guys making that play all the time, or with a great deal of consistency. And
absolutely.
So, Scott, I want to get you out of here, but I want to ask you the last question I always try to ask everybody. What does it mean to you to be a Tar Heel?
I don't want to get all teared up here, but, and it changed my life. I mean, my whole family's here. It changed my life. And, it's something I thought about recently because of education and worldview and politics and all that. I really thought back to my education in North Carolina. And I don't know what, is being taught there now, but I look back to when I was there, and I was actually looking at it critically. Like, was I really taught? But, hey, I had accounting. I had entrepreneurial stuff. I had first, I had manufacturing. I had supply chain stuff. I had sales. I had marketing. I had Nietzsche and Kant and Kierkegaard. Those are philosophical stuff. I had Milton Friedman, right? Econ 101. And wow, I had Sartre. And I look back and I'm saying, they really educated me, even though I didn't know it. I didn't go way deep in anything, but I'm rounded, and that's a liberal arts education. And I went into business. It was commercial real estate, but I was so proud of my education from the University of North Carolina. So I have two daughters that graduated there, who had my ex-wife graduated. So we're a Tar Heel family. It wasn't mean to be a Tar Heel. It's a special thing. I would say this. When Jay Billis said, it won't matter that Carolina beat Duke at Cameron and in the Final Four if they don't win the national championship. I said, Jay, you know you're lying. You know you're lying. Let's be honest. If we remember when Hubert's first year and he beat him, K, and then he beat him in the Final Four. Oh, yeah, we were up with a minute 30 to go and almost won the national championship. Listen, if he won the national championship, he wouldn't be like, he'd be like, remember when he beat him? And then we beat him again? I mean, and Caleb went off and RJ went off. You can't change that narrative. So what does it mean to be a Tar Heel? I don't know. That has something to do with
it. That's great. I love it. Scott Stankavage, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for sharing some of your stories. Can't wait to dig in. There's so many more stories to be told, and look forward to sharing some of those again sometime in the near future. Scott Stankavage, once a Tar Heel.
Tar Heels.
Always. That's right. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's it for today's episode of Locked on Tar Heels. I want once again to thank Scott Stankavage for joining us, just sharing great stories with us, and helping us see a little bit more behind the scenes of what Sam Howell just experienced and went through and will be experiencing and going through in the days, weeks, and months ahead. If you would love to, you can go follow the show on Twitter. Even if you don't love to, go do it, because it would be a great way to stay engaged and involved. At Locked on Heels, you can follow me at Isaac Schade, ISAACSCHADE. Would love if you would go and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're there, go ahead and rate and review. Love if you would share some of why you love Locked on Tar Heels. Well, that's it for this week of Locked on Tar Heels. Coming up next week, we're going to have lots more good stuff to talk about, more football content, some good things with John Garcia Jr., and we've got a little playful Duke and Carolina content coming up in the weeks ahead as well, so that's going to be fun. Now that you've listened to Locked on Tar Heels, let me encourage you to make Locked on ACC your second listen today. Get all your daily ACC news in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available everywhere you get podcasts. Hey, thanks so much for spending part of your week talking with me, listening to Scott today. And don't forget, once again, Mother's Day this weekend. I hope it is, in fact, a great weekend for you. And remember that it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Until next week, peace!